to the entire world of governments. The man of African descent will be henceforth known and classified as a protected and endangered race. This declaration is mandated and immediately in effect for the following reasons, and at the commencement of reciting the mandate will carry the full weight of its freedoms, rights, restrictions, and penalties. The cause of such an action is due simply to the systematic extinctions of indigenous and marooned people of African descent across the entire globe, from kings or presidents to store owners and labor workers, from the urban youth in Baltimore to the Haitian disaster unfolding daily. The King Leopolds of the world are still alive and well, and it's politics that allows men to be barbarians and savages to those they feel worthy of their exploitation. The black family cannot therefore request or depend on the formal governments of the world to recognize or uphold these declarations, and to wit, must announce at once the acknowledgement of their presence in our midst around the planet. As of this day and every day after, beyond time's end, the black man will not be apprehended, assaulted, or in any fashion accosted by anyone without cause, probable or definite, to the infringement of his forward progress. The mandate requires the officials of the black man's government to enforce laws and protect and serve the black man's communities without jurisdictional interferences from foreign interests, which is any non-imperial African nation entity, and will here and after be known and classified as a foreign agency. This proclaims that the occupation of neighborhoods, the disruptive actions of foreign agencies, and the continuous industrial enslavement of African people home and abroad are in direct violation of these proceedings, and will henceforth be known as a blatant act of war. These acts of war, however minute or great, are the direct causes of our severe language, and will be handled as severely as they have been received, for the competent and assured preservation of the Africans and their descendants, the original people of the earth. Upon an act of war being done, the entire race of Africans will be put on immediate alert, and will be held liable for the enforcement of said penalties for any violations happening in his home country or any country he happens to presently set foot upon. No infraction will be tolerated from a foreign agency to an imperial African nation subject, and will equally be recognized as an act of war. The penalties for non-imperial African nation personnel will be consistent with those of African descent, and will be immediately enforced by those of the imperial African nations in the vicinity of such an infraction. This severity is imperative because the bodily personage of the black family has not been seen as the precious existence it is, but as a cheap yet useful commodity that can be discarded or molested, mutilated, and murdered once its compliance or use has expired. The black family will be henceforth known as African Imperials, and by this classification liable and endowed with the rights and responsibilities of upholding these edicts, since the current regimes of the world seem remiss in these affairs. What constitutes as a mass filing of lawsuits and United Nations appeals will instead be an eminent directive to include all world nations and provinces which include or come in contact with peoples of our lands declared as Imperial African Nations property. Imperial African Nations property is defined as being a continent, country, state, or city where Africans originate or currently inhabit. Therefore, any land beyond Africa's borders which Imperial African nations currently inhabit will be declared Imperial African Nations property, and will be in effect considered Africa. As the African Imperials reside in every reach of the planet, the entire world will summarily be declared and operated as Imperial African property. Foreign agencies who are non-compliant with the Imperial African nations' laws of the land will be considered enemies of our states, and all African Imperials in every land will be at war with this foreign agency and all of its provinces. The charter of the Imperial African nations is bounded by the Most High, and will be honored till death.